Hello Facebook, I'm Alicia Malone. Welcome to South by Southwest. I am here with the wonderful Edgar Wright. How's it going?
Hello, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to be here with you in this beautiful barbecue place, even though I'm vegetarian. It smells really good.
It does smell, I had some, it tasted good as well.
I realised that wasn't a question, but I just pointed the camera, the microphone.
I'm sorry you were tortured by the smell of barbecue.
No, if you guys are watching live, please let us know if you have some questions, you have comments that you'd like to me to ask Edgar. Lucy's over there with the whiteboard and she's going to show it to me. But first off, super exciting, Baby Driver is premiering tonight. Do you know what you're in for in terms of the Austin crowds? Because they can get rowdy and they can really get into the movies.
I've never had one of my movies at South by Southwest, not a movie I directed. I was here like 6 years ago with a movie I produced, so I'm aware of the festival response. And Austin's always been really good to me in the past. When I've shown my other films here, I've always had a great time in Austin. So I'm nervous and excited for tonight.
I'm excited for people to see this film so I can talk to them about it. I love the tone of the movie because it's much more of an action thriller.
Yeah, it's a bit different from the other movies. I mean, it has elements of my previous movies in the use of music and the action, and it's funny in places, but it is like a bit of a departure in that it's it's essentially an action thriller, which is something I've always wanted to do. So a lot of the movies that I've made are like dream movies for me. It's I would love to make this kind of movie, and this is literally a genre and a type of movie I've been wanting to make for 20 years. It's
an ode to heist movies and getaway drivers, but also very much to music. Can you tell me about how music is infused into all the characters and the dialogue as well?
Yeah, I mean, the premise of the movie is that Ansel Elgort's character, the titular baby, is a young getaway driver, hence the name. And he is sort of on the periphery of a gang in terms of he's like a gopher and a driver for a crime lord played by Kevin Spacey. But he has a hearing injury from when he was 7. He was in a car crash, and he has tinnitus, which is like the sort of the ringing in your ears that you get, which is what tinnitus is. And as such, he uses music and his own personal soundtrack to drown that out. And that has become something of an obsession and something which both motivates him and makes him focus and makes him good at what he does. But it's also something he can't really live without it. So I always wanted to do like a heist kind of action movie to music, and this is it.
And killer soundtrack as well. We've got a question from Matt on Facebook who wants to know, could you be a getaway driver?
I think no. I think having seen this in action, I mean, it's too high stakes for me. I think I would probably overcook a turn and go slam into a wall. I think so. People who are like amazing precision drivers, it's something that they were born to do it, or they've spent that 10,000 hours of getaway driving. And I don't know. I mean, I find it a fascinating job, and that's why I wrote the movie. It's something that I'm not necessarily a big gearhead in terms of the actual cars, but I love driving and I love sort of motion and music. So that was what really inspired me. And through the development of the movie, I got to meet some ex-getaway drivers. So that was fascinating. So a lot of their procedure is in the movie.
Yeah, it's a fascinating job, and one that I imagine music might help them get into the mood. Did you ask them about whether they used music at all?
Yeah. Well, there's lots of things that are in the movie that came out of interviews that I did with real getaway drivers. Like one person that I interviewed a lot, whose name was Joe Lawyer, who's a writer now, and he's an ex-convict. He wouldn't play music on the way to the job, but he would have a song afterwards. So after he had completed a bank robbery, he would drive back to his house or a motel with different kind of cigarette songs, like the song afterwards. And he literally used to drive around to Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson. That's not a joke, he really did that. And then there's another story which factored into the script about Jinx songs as well. Like there was another story that I thought was fascinating where a group of bank robbers, this guy was doing a job and then one of his colleagues wouldn't go into the bank because the radio was playing Knocking on Heaven's Door and it freaked him out, and he said it meant that they were all going to die. So there's lots of things where there's the sort of and other drivers that I spoke to would have their kind of like sort of like their soundtrack or like a compilation or a killer track to drive to. I think that's a lot of people have driving songs, and it's no different with Getaway Drivers.
And do you have a filming song? Is there a song that you go to pump you up before you go and shoot a scene?
Not necessarily pump up song, but for some reason on every single movie I've ever done, I get this song stuck in my head. And it's a disco song by the Andrea True Connection, which is More, 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 How Do You Like It?
Oh yeah, I know that one. More, more, more.
How do you like it? How do you like it? And for some reason, whenever I'm making a movie, they get stuck in my head. And so my cinematographer, Bill Pope, who I've done 3 films with, every time I start singing it, he laughs and laughs. It's like an earworm that I associate with filmmaking, and I cannot stop singing it. So that's a weird one, but the Andrea True Connection.
A lot of music references, a lot of film references as well. Niall wants to know any film homages in Baby Driver.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of that genre, so I think sort of just through osmosis, there are lots of films that like, I grew up with that like mean a lot to me in this genre. Like obvious ones would be, the most obvious one would be Walter Hill's 1978 movie, The Driver, which is a sort of key inspiration, and Walter actually appears in the film in some form.
So cool.
which is I'm really happy about that he did it, because he doesn't usually do cameos in any way. And then I like a lot of kind of like sort of like classic car chase movies like sort of Vanishing Point and Bullet. And then in terms of heist movies, like things like The Hot Rock, I really like that movie. And then in the 90s, I think the sort of holy trinity of like 90s heist thrillers would be Reservoir Dogs,
Heat.
Point Break, Heat. Yeah. So there's a lot of movies that like have factored into it, but also one of the interesting things for me is to sort of like, because I would talk to these ex-criminals, I would ask them about movies and what they thought of heist movies. And it would always be fascinating to me, the ones that the kind of like the actual robbers themselves actually watched and liked. And there is a thing where it is true to say that like real life criminals like ape what is in the movies. It sort of goes around in a vicious circle. And I remember that the same guy, Joe Lawyer, that I spoke to, he said an interesting thing where he said every sort of like wannabe gangster has the same movies in his like collection. It was always like Godfather, Scarface, Heat, and then he said, and if they're Mexican, Blood In, Blood Out. And I kind of thought that was fascinating. And he said, those films like they are inspired by real life crimes, and they sometimes go on to inspire real life criminals. So that's kind of fascinating. So I would say the movie is influenced by the movies and also then some of the crimes that they inspired.
We've got a question from Jonathan. Is Noel Fielding in this movie?
Well, he is in a weird way, yes. What that is a reference to is that I made a music video in 2002 for a band called Mint Royale. It's called Blue Song, and you can see it on YouTube. And it is a music video that I made in 2002 about a getaway driver who like listens to sort of and sings along with an entire track whilst the gang are inside. And I'd already had the idea for the movie before then, and at the time I was sort of mad at myself for like using up this idea for this music video. But then it actually came to be a benefit because it was like I'd sort of post-dated the idea back to 2002. And also because Noel became very famous after that video, it's a video that kept sort of coming back around again. And so there is a tiny clip of the video in the movie. So yes, he is in it, in a way.
Well, that's what's really cool about seeing you talk about this movie is knowing how long you've had this idea for and how long you've been working on it. And so basically this idea is about as old as your lead star, right?
That's true. Yeah. It's absolutely correct. Ansel is 22, and I first came up with the idea 22 years ago because I was listening a lot to that John Spencer Blues Explosion album called Orange. And the first track on that album is called Bell Bottoms. And I used to listen to it in my bedroom and sort of like visualize this car chase. And I didn't know what the movie would be or how it would play into it. But in a way, like this movie, like that I finally made this year is like sort of like 22 years later as an extension of me kind of like dreaming about this scene.
Yeah. I love it, and now it's all come true, so it's
Yeah.
exciting. Marlene says, what was the most challenging thing to do in this movie? That must be hard to narrow down. A lot of challenges.
Well, I think the car chases themselves are inherently very challenging because car chases are as tough to make as they are fun to watch, because it's an incredible feat of stunt work and choreography and location work and cinematography and physical effects. So it's like sort of you have to put like together a real A-team to sort of pull off these car chases. And I've done some car bits in my previous movies, but nothing to this extent. And you know, it's like just every single shot is arduous. And you know, car chases are like made up of like hundreds of shots. And I've always admired directors who can do great action scenes like that. And having done the movie, I have even more admiration for like what a feat it is to do those sequences.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll watch those movies again with a completely different lens, knowing what it takes.
Well, it's funny, before I started filming, I did an interview with George Miller about Mad Max Fury Road. So I watched that movie and it completely blew my head off, and then I got to I did the Q&A and then we had dinner and stuff, so I just had like a million questions for him. So I was very fortunate to get a chance to sort of pick his brains as sort of like, to me, like the master of like contemporary like sort of car action.
Dr. George.
Dr. George Miller.
I love him. This is a question that keeps coming up time and time again. Did the Simon and Garfunkel song Baby Driver inform the title?
I don't want to give away too much, but you won't be disappointed. If you're a Simon and Garfunkel fan, you will not be disappointed.
Well, talking about the choreography of the action, it's so much fun to watch on a big screen. I can't wait to see it with a packed audience as well. When it comes to working with the actors on this, is it like learning a dance? Did you have to practice it before you got to the set?
I got to say, the actors, all who have some musical chops, especially Ansel, Kevin Spacey, Jamie, Asa Gonzalez, Lily James, less so John, but they all kind of had sort of like musical background or like had done that form. So it actually, they all like took to it like a duck to water, and it wasn't anything where at any point kind of people said, oh, this is dumb or this is weird. They just kind of like got into it and loved that idea of it. And so that was a great part of the process, was the rehearsal with these guys and doing lots of rehearsal. And it's, you know, if you rehearse the movie before you start shooting, you then have to do like, you know, on Saturdays or like Sundays, do like refreshers, because you might have rehearsed something and then not shoot it for 3 months.
Yeah.
So we would rehearse some things, and then sometimes like me and Ansel and Ryan Hefferton, the choreographer, would do refresher sessions nearer the time of actually shooting something.
Daniel says, was this the most fun you've ever had making a movie? In a certain way?
None of them are fun.
Until after.
Let me say this: the most fun part of it is finishing the movie.
Yeah.
For me, the actors have a better time, but like it's, if you know, like I remember all of them with through rose-tinted glasses. But whenever I'm in the middle of it, it's the antithesis of fun. It's like really hard work. So I think that's the thing, is that sort of like, I say this is like, it takes a great degree of difficulty and blood, sweat and tears to make something look effortless.
Yeah, and it does look effortless. Seeing it tonight with a crowd, I mean, it must feel special to be here in Austin. I joke about the barbecue, but that's one of the must-do things you have to experience if you come to Austin. Also is seeing a movie that has a musical theme to it. How perfect is it to play here at South by?
Oh no, that's great. I think when the idea came up and I'd been here before, it, you know, was a no-brainer, because it's like South by Southwest is a music and a film festival, and to show a film with lots and lots of music and it be very music heavy and was, you know, like a great idea. So I'm nervous and thrilled to show it tonight.
And your cast is going to be joining you as well. How much fun is it to reconnect with them after this time?
Well, it's funny, we've just started doing press for it, so it's actually sort of funny telling stories about the movie out loud for the first time. We're sort of in that period where we haven't got sick of each other's anecdotes. So it's nice, it's great. I mean, so I've seen them quite a lot over since we've wrapped, which is great. And the only cast member that I knew before the movie was John Hamm, And you know, I'd say it's a really nice thing that every time you make a new movie, you inherit new family members, and I've seen a lot of the cast in different cities since, so it's been great.
I love John Hamm. William says, how did you balance the development of the characters and the action?
It's a very sophisticated question, William.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good, I think so really, when you start writing, you have to have a good handle on what the tone of the movie is. Like if it's set in the real world, you know, what things would or wouldn't happen. I don't know. I mean, it's a difficult thing to answer that, other than that I had a sort of a vision of what the tone is, and in writing it, I just try to stick to my own rules, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you were putting together the script, I love that you Instagrammed that line that said that every scene in the movie is driven by music. What came first? Was it the songs or the idea for what would happen in the action?
Well, like I said, I think it was actually sort of like the song that I heard by John Spencer Blues President that got me thinking about like a car and music movie. And then later, as I started to think about writing and what the plot would be and what some of the scenes would be, then sort of specific songs would come to mind that I would write to. So I wrote the script to the music. Mm-hmm. So the same songs that are in the movie are the same ones that I would like write the scene and like listen to them on a loop, you know. So each kind of like scene would fit the song.
There's many iPods in this movie, which I love because it kind of almost lends a nostalgic feel to it, or a timeless feel. Do you own some iPods?
I still use my iPod. I'm dreading the day when it finally like craps out and then like it can't be fixed because they don't sell them anymore. So I know at some point I'll be going on eBay, but I'm a big fan of like the 80 gig like iPod.
Yeah.
I much prefer it to having stuff on my phone and having to stream things. I'd rather have like this kind of like hard drive.
Yeah, I like it too, because then you don't get disrupted by messages and emails. Yes. You can just listen to the music. Last question from Tom Merritt. Are there any genres left for your brilliance to attack?
Oh my God. I mean, all the others. Anything that I haven't previously tackled, I guess. I mean, you know, I'm a big genre fan, so I like the idea of, you know, like, there's not many like genres that I like wouldn't be interested in doing something. So, you know, it's an open field in that regard, you know.
I'd love to see an Edgar Wright musical.
Yeah, I think I'd like to do something like that sometime. I mean, this is probably as close as you're going to get for the moment.
Well, Edgar Wright, writer, director, snappy dresser, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your movie. It is wonderful. Can't wait for you guys to see Baby Driver when it comes out in August. I'm Alicia Malone. See you soon.